I am Dobromir. I was born long ago in a small town on the skirts of the old Balkan mountain, where the river Leva slices the mountain in two. My town got pillaged by a horde of savages. They burned everything to the ground and everyone perished. I don't know if I did as well and was reincarnated, or somehow just my spirit was transported to the world of Sanctuary. But that's when the monks of Ivgorod found me and raised me as one of their own. They trained me, I learned their ways and became one of their most powerful warriors. So in the autumn of the year of the Great Plague I embarked on a journey to find new powerful ethereal weapons that had appeared in the world of Sanctuary. Using those weapons I entered the mystical Nephilim rifts to unleash this newfound power and set out to complete the utmost difficult of trials. It took many attempts, and there were many failures along the way, but I learned from each failure and became stronger. I had already completed several of these most difficult rifts, but I needed to be fast. And given the right circumstances, I knew I could best the Guardian of the Rift in close to a mere 10 minutes. I finally entered the rift that took me to the Festering Woods, which were infested with zombies, skeletons, and grotesque monsters. I had to maintain my composure and follow the Guardian's path. In an ancient artifact of old, Ganai's Cube, I had extracted the legendary power of a huge axe, the Executioner. The power of that weapon allowed me to kill enemies that were very low on life, and in turn this would spawn an energy ring granting increased strength to anyone standing inside it. Because of the Oculus ring that my follower Elena was wearing. Another part of my strategy that was of critical importance was timing when to achieve supreme serenity in Ascension. This served several purposes. Not taking any damage meant that I would do additional damage because of the Squirts necklace that I wore. And in addition, it meant that my Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac would allow me to call on my mystic allies more often. Elena had also equipped several artifacts that allowed her to blind our enemies. A belt, Cord of the Sherma, and a helm, Blind Fate. She was also wearing the Hand of the Prophet token that gave her the power to use all her abilities. The legendary gems that we both had, I, the Enforcer, and she, Esoteric Alteration and Mutilation Guard, meant that she took nearly no damage. From there on out, the last piece of the puzzle was hoping that there would be a pylon in the rift that would allow me to become a conduit of lightning and annihilate the elite and champions of the Rift Guardian's minions. One thing that I learned from my previous attempts was to not delay taking the power of the pylon, because at this point it was raced against time, and even a few elite and champion monsters would allow me to progress more quickly and would allow for additional pylons to spawn. In spite of that, I might have rushed a bit, and there were a few close calls where I almost fell, but decisions needed to be made quickly. Now, what was important was to not succumb to everything that the champions and elites were throwing at me. Try and group them together as best as I could, and make sure that lightning strikes would pierce them. I had a brief lapse of faith, but Elena's skills saved me, and now there no longer was room for any missteps. Vilehurst the Slayer survived, so I lured him to follow me. And with the power granted from the next pylon, I could finish what I had started. What was important there was to make sure to use the Way of the Hundred Fists on the elite monsters because of the legendary gem, Bane of the Stricken, that I was wearing. Every hit meant that I would take increased damage, that they would take increased damage, which would get compounded by the power granted from the pylon. The grotesques can be dangerous with their vile explosions, so one has to be extremely careful around them. You also have to stay out of ground effects, dodge the strained magic that radiates from the foes. Go back in when you achieve Ascension and assimilate additional power with every hit by the way of the 100 Fists. The flaws of the brutes were revealed, and I carried the momentum forward, trying to strike the balance between safety and seizing the initiative. One thing that you have to know, and it comes with experience, is when to stay and fight, when to move on, and what to leave behind. Reciting the mantra Savina means that not that you benefit from the increased area damage that some items give you, and hence it's not as critical to have many enemies around you. However, the closer they are to each other, the more likely are your allies to burn more than one of them. At the same time, your allies do have to reach their intended targets. So I kept moving and gathering more and more of the zombies and grotesques. I encountered wretched mothers that I knew would spawn even more zombies. And at some point I even wondered if it might have been too much. Not because it would be any more dangerous, but because of my mystic ally explosions. As in that case again, you want to achieve a balance between the number of enemies around you and how many will be hit by the flames of the explosions. The chains of fire burned me, and I had another brief lapse of fate. Now I had not only the grotesques to deal with, the plague on the ground, the chains of fire, but also the bursts of frost and ice. Nevertheless, as always, I tried to stay inside the circles of the Oculus ring, assimilating more and more power with every hit, and sending forth my mystic allies.
I don't have enough spirit.
My heart was pounding at this point. Success was all but assured. Nevertheless, mistakes were also made. Thankfully, they weren't costly.
That ability is not yet recharged.
I was surrounded by monsters. I needed healing and misjudged when I would come back down after having ascended. That's when I fell. And that's another example of the importance of keeping your composure and not letting emotions get the better of you. Nevertheless, even when you fall, you dust yourself off and you get back up again to fight with increased
It is not red
focus.
enough spirit.
Shi Devilkin did a good job of hiding amongst his evil kind and surviving
I
this
must
long,
wait to use that ability.
but his end would come nevertheless.
My injuries are too severe.
The last pylon that spawned granted me a shield that made me immune to attacks. Because of the executioner power which allows us to spawn the Oculus energy rings coupled with the effects of Squirt's necklace, the shield is extremely useful and would have been allowed even quicker progression. Well, the power pylon would have been much more useful for the Rift Guardian, but that's a story for another day. The Guardian of the Rift was Saxtreth. The demon never really stood a chance, but I did make another mistake, as I didn't maintain my momentum, and in the race against the clock, that is important.
It is not ready yet.
All in all, there are several very important things in completing the trials. First and foremost comes knowledge. Second is experience. Then there is the time that you invest, and finally a little bit of luck. But with knowledge, experience, and time, you can make your own luck. So there we have it, 3,454 paragon and the completion of a Greater Rift 150 in 11 minutes and 18.
My thanks.